In this presentation, we're going to look at how we calculate readiness to train, and readiness just refers to an athlete's current state relative to their recent normal. And it's a way of asking, is the athlete presenting today as expected, or are they unusually high or low compared to their recent baseline? And it's going to help us then identify short-term state deviations, and they then reflect fatigue or soreness, poor sleep, stress, illness, motivation, blah, blah. Now, what we want is a measure of readiness. And in this example, we're going to use jump height. So every single week, we're going to collect jump height data. We'll get our 3 trials, and we'll just take the average of those 3 trials. And the average, because we're after state stability, we're not after capability, which is a performance test result where we take the maximum number to represent adaptations through the training block. And you can see this blue line here is just us plotting as a line graph the average jump score every single week. Now, what we want to know is, does that deviate from our normal? And normal is going to be determined through a rolling baseline. So the rolling baseline is the average of the previous 4 weeks. So wherever you go, it's always the previous 4 weeks. And 4 weeks because that's probably the minimum amount of time to find a representative baseline. Maybe anything less than that, and it's going to be really likely to show big fluctuations. Now, the performance change then, or the readiness change rather, comes in the form of taking this week's score and minus the rolling baseline, and we want to know whether that score is higher or lower. If it's higher, maybe they're in good shape and we can push them. If it's lower, maybe there's some fatigue, etc., and we need to adjust training, reduce volume, change the exercise, whatever it might be. But before we take on any intervention here, we want to make sure that change is meaningful. So is it greater than the expected variation or fluctuation in performance that we'd expect to see from week to week? So in order to calculate what the expected fluctuation would be, we just look at the standard deviation of the previous 4 weeks. And again, no matter where you go, it's always the previous 4 weeks. So that represents the fluctuation that we would expect to see within the athlete. So when we get the change score, we need to make it relative to that. Now, there's one more layer to put in here. Now, you can choose to do it or not, and in the paper we explain why mathematically it's more sound to take the propagation of variation, which is just to ensure that we account for error. So I would just get that standard deviation, and then I would add this equation to it. Again, you can download this Excel file as well. So just moving on from there then, and accepting this, is we look to see whether the change is larger than what's the expected fluctuation within the athlete. If it falls within the expected fluctuation, so it's within plus or minus 1, then the athlete is stable, right? So these are all example of stable scores. If, however, it exceeds the fluctuation, what we would typically see, then we would class it as a likely increase or a likely decrease depending on the direction. If it exceeds this isn't error, this is fluctuation. If it exceeds athlete fluctuation by more than double, so in this case it's 4 times the expected fluctuation, then we would class it as a very likely increase. And these are just descriptors that we chose within the paper. You can adjust those and the associated thresholds as you wish. So here the change in scores is double the fluctuation, what you would expect to see, and so it's a very likely decrease. And here you can just see the the formula to create these descriptors, and you can just change what's within inside the quotation marks as you wish, along with, of course, changing the thresholds as you wish. In terms of creating the graph, of course, this is a line graph. So we've got our data here. We can then add secondary data series to it. So in terms of getting a rolling baseline in, I would just add another data series and then highlight the rolling baseline. Remember to still highlight the first 4 cells to ensure that it starts in the 5th week. You then want to ensure that you're capturing the typical fluctuation within that rolling baseline, and we're going to do that via the error bars. So you're going to specify the value or custom value specify, and here's that readiness, here's the fluctuation. So we need to add the fluctuation again, making sure you've got the first 4 weeks, which are blank cells, to make sure it starts at the right point. So this represents the fluctuation on that rolling baseline. And then what we're looking for really is the change. So is the score, this week's score, greater than the rolling baseline with the fluctuation accounted for? So here you can see that this is a meaningful change. I mean, this is just about a meaningful change as well. It's just on the threshold, and then over here this is a meaningful change, and you can see it's below as well. Okay, you can download the sheet, read the accompanying paper as well.